With regard to telecom, well, there is no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. How does the pandemic affect telecom? The answer varies by company and carrier and service and industry. And the short answer is that the pandemic has certainly heightened the awareness and the importance, or perhaps lack thereof, of an effective disaster recovery and business continuity plan. Disaster recovery and business continuity planning is like an insurance policy that you get. It can be as expensive as your pockets are deep, and it's often the sticking point between IT and finance. IT, of course, wants to build their network bulletproof, and finance wants to be sure that their dollars are being spent wisely. But disaster is not just hurricane or flood, although they are very real. The most common concerns reported by a national survey of C-level IT professionals report that 65% of them believe that power failure is their biggest disaster point. So they go and they install battery backups and generators, and they feel like they may have minimized that exposure. 65% cite network outages, so they provision alternate call routing plans and multiple data connections over different mediums such as fiber, cable, and wireless to help spread that risk in the event that one of those mediums should fail. And 55% surveyed claim that hardware failure is their biggest pain point. So they stock their closets with spare parts, crash kits, switches, routers, and maybe even servers in the event that they should experience an equipment failure. But what it's done, the word disaster has lulled some companies into a false sense of security. Among the host of elements in the disaster periodic table, disgruntled employees and revenge is up there. Vandalism, hacking, and cybersecurity certainly. Water damage from space above. Nothing had anything to do with you or anybody else in the neighborhood. Terrorist attacks and building collapses like 9/11, or supply chain disruption. What if your vendor has the disaster and can't fulfill their supply to you? And of course, we're talking right now about pandemic, which has caused a lot of our companies to rely on an absentee workforce. The term disaster recovery and business continuity are offered interchangeably, but there's two different components that work together as part of an organization's recovery plan. Disaster recovery is primarily concerned with the systems and infrastructure, and by definition, limited in scope, with the ultimate goal of complete recovery within a defined period of time. Whereas business continuity is an attempt to blend the IT emphasis of disaster recovery efforts into a larger scope determination of which business units and functions must be prevented from interruption, or if interrupted, the priority to which they are restored. And some of those key components include emergency response procedures, of course, damage assessment and insurance claims processing, a plan to handle phone calls, websites, emails, executive communication plan, a communication plan for clients and vendors, an employee communication plan, banking and payroll plan to keep your business going. The other one that somebody doesn't know, people think about or rarely do, is a public relations plan. If somebody buys a bottle of Tylenol and figures out it's cyanide down the road, there's going to be some explaining to do from that drug manufacturer. So the long and short of it is that you can have a recovery plan without business continuity, but you can't have a business continuity plan without some degree of disaster recovery. So from a customer's perspective, how does our voice and data carriers provide flexibility, and our vendors, how do they provide flexibility? Well, there's two kinds of customers, and they're provided in two different ways. Customers who rely on customer premise equipment have a unique set of challenges because all of their systems are in-house and primarily count on people sitting at their desk to access those systems. There are other methods of technology like hosted and cloud-based systems that provide a greater degree of flexibility and redundancy. For example, a voice over IP telephone user can unplug their phone from their office and plug it in any internet connection around the world and function as if they were sitting at their desk. And with some degree of unified communications, they can pass calls from their phones to their cell phones, from their cell phones to their voicemail to their texts, email to text, whichever way they think about it. So in the future of your carrier relationships depend on the services and the companies that provide those services and how they can react in times for need of change. Right now, carriers are experiencing a lot of cancellation orders because companies aren't prepared to have the services that they've ordered delivered. They can't get to their buildings. They don't know how long this is going to last, so they're prolonging the delivery times. And the new orders are experiencing prolonged delivery times from up to 3 to 4 times their normal intervals because right now efforts are being focused on service-related issues. And when all this clears, there may be a longer prolonged interval than that. The bad news is that the payments to the carriers are still due. Suspensions and disconnects due to non-payment, they vary by the carrier, the amount owed, but most important is probably your payment history. Competitive local companies that provide service still are accountable to their underlying carriers to pay their phone bill. So the smart thing to do is to talk with your carrier and find out what flexibility they may be able to offer, because no one's going to get carrier services for free forever. So the action items here is to talk to your carriers and vendors about an option in developing a short and long-term strategic plan that fits your company's IT objectives. That can include a technology refresh or a change in technology. And you would do that by conducting a feasibility study that would minimize the impact of all possible future disasters. But to do that, it's probably a good idea to conduct an audit of your IT expense, the inventory, and your disaster preparedness so you can make informed decisions about the first 2 items I mentioned. An audit is a good way to find the fat in an IT budget that will help offset or pay for technology refreshes or changes in technology without going to finance and asking for more money that might not be in the budget. So I want to thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, please contact Util Auditors and we'll set up a time to get into this a little bit more in detail. I wish you all the best out there. Stay well, stay healthy, and thank you for listening.